Hi, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Candidates. My name is Heidi Lane, and we're here with the Democratic slate for the election coming up. And this is a good opportunity to meet the candidates. You can call in and ask questions. The number is 721-8814. And with me here today, we have Jeff Kotkin, Tony Martino, Jerry Roberts, Paul Montanari, and Martin Walsh. And joining us shortly will be Steve Barry. So I thought maybe I would just ask everyone just to sort of introduce yourself and maybe talk briefly about an area that you're most concerned about or that you have a real interest in. So can we start with Jeff?
Sure. So I'm Jeff Kotkin. I've been on the town council for 8 years now, and I'm running for a 5th term. I've been in town for 33 years. And my kids are all went through Emerson Williams. They're all out of college now. They're all out of the house. So I have the time to devote to the town's business. And it's a lot of work. If you're going to be a good council person, you're going to probably spend 2 nights a week on council or related business. And I've got that time. Now, I work at Northeast Utilities. I'm a financial officer. So my focus has been on the council, mainly on budgetary issues and on insurance issues. So if you've looked at what's been driving budgets over the past several years, one issue has clearly been insurance costs, which were going up significantly. Well, we've had a number of initiatives to reduce those, and I want to continue to push that as we go forth because we've really seen some good dividends from that over the last few years. The other issue I want to devote myself to is economic development. Yeah, I've been up and down the town areas close to the Silas Deane Highway, and there's a lot of frustration out there that we don't have the businesses that we want on the Silas Deane Highway. In fact, in some cases, we don't have businesses at all. So economic development is really important, particularly on our main commercial thoroughfare. So those are a couple areas I want to devote myself to over the next couple of years.
And we'll be able to delve more into that with everyone here, too, but those are good. Tony, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Tony Martino. I'm running for town council. I've been in town for about 34 years. My children also grew up in the Westfield school system, and they're both off and on their own right now. I worked for the town for 17 years. I was an operations analyst. I handled 4 department budgets, the capital budgets, renovation budgets, and grant budgets. So I'm very familiar with the financial needs of the town and look forward to working with Jeff on finances. I'm currently on the Economic Development Commission and have been visiting businesses in the town, trying to keep them here, and would like to work on trying to bring new businesses to town and fill up some of those empty stores, and work with the town planner and some commercial developers to see what we can do to fill those empty spaces. And the last thing I'd like to do is work between the town and the board to see through shared services where we can combine some stuff, such as maintenance, where if we combine our staffs, we can do more work in-house instead of putting stuff out to bid for contractors to do and save some money that way.
Jerry?
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts. I've lived in town for 38 years. I'm married. My husband is Ed Brimery, former police chief in Middletown. I have 2 grown children. My daughter went through Highcrest and Silas Deane Middle School. My son had already aged out by the time we moved to Middletown, Wethersfield. I've been on the town council. I was on the town council from 1994 to 1999. Then I switched and was on the Board of Education from the year 2000 to 2007. I served as chairperson for 2 terms. Then in 2007, I came back to the town council, and I've been there ever since, and I hope to be reelected on November 5th. We have a great collegial team on the council, the Democrats. Right now there's only 3 of us, so it gets a little bit lonely down at our end, and we're hoping that the rest of the slate will be elected with us. I'm an attorney, worked for the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Developmental Services, so I have a particular interest in persons with disabilities. I also have a particular interest in senior citizens and the services or lack of services they get in town. Recently, Tony Martino and I were standing at the flu clinic, and there were a lot of seniors coming in and out, and one of their main concerns was, what do they do during the day? What kinds of services are provided? Where do they go? Right now they have 2 rooms in this building. They don't feel that's adequate. So I think the needs of the seniors in terms of services and also how our budget decisions affect them are prime. That's it for now.
That's good, Jerry. Thank you. I guess you're next, Paul. Oh, well, let me tell you about my. Oh, I'm not running. Go ahead, Paul. You go.
We'd love to hear more about you. I am Paul Montanari, also running again as a current incumbent. I've served on the council for 7 years. Had the pleasure of working closely with Jerry and Jeff the last 4 in the minority and our lonely side of the table. But I own Kelly Container and Freezer, which is up in Suffield, Connecticut. So I've owned my own business for a dozen or so years. So I have that particular expertise and interest area as it pertains to our town, and obviously have a lot of thoughts about redevelopment and business stimulation and the kinds of things that I think are very important for our community to propel forward. And I would tell you that a concern of mine over the last 4 years has been the stagnation in that area. So I bring that expertise, but I also have a broader interest in education. Many folks remember that my wife Julie was on the board for several years, so she kind of drew me into the whole public service sector. About 8 years ago, I was involved with Economic Development Commission and was vice chair for a couple of years before Russ went into the legislature, so I filled his spot for a year. So those areas of our interest are very important to me. I also would say that I think those of us who have served and been together the last 4 years would probably identify that I've done an awful lot of reach out from a collaborative point of view toward the majority with the intent to have us have a voice. One of the things that I think I feel strongly about is, and people sometimes forget this when you have a majority and a minority party, but we represent a fairly large constituency in town. And obviously the majority has the voting capacity to pretty much move forward on any of the initiatives that are important to them. But I feel strongly in a town of this size that all of our elected officials have to have a voice at the table, because we represent those constituents who have elected us to do that. And that's been a very concerning area for me, particularly the last term, where I would think most of us would agree that have been in the minority that our voices have been pretty dimmed, that many of the votes have been contentious. They even have been done in such a fashion that we've had virtually no unanimous votes. So that's kind of an area of interest for me that I'd love to see strengthened, and we'll talk a little bit about our vision.
Okay.
Thanks, Heidi.
Martin, you're up.
Oh, thank you. My name is Martin Walsh. I've lived in Wethersfield since 2000. I have 2 daughters, Katie and Brittany, who are in college. Katie's off to Florence, Italy for the year, so she's having a wonderful time. And Brittany is in Northampton at Smith. I've served on the board from 2003 to 2005. I was fortunate to serve on the council along with Jerry and Jeff from 2005 to 2009, and Paul.
For a part of that.
How could you possibly forget
I
Paul?
was a later rival.
in the majority. And then I lost in 2009 and was appointed to the board in 2010 and elected to the board in my own right in 2011. I feel strongly about the community. It's my adopted home. My daughters grew up here. My wife's extended family is here. I've been really proud the last couple of years of the way the board has functioned. We've come in with 2 unanimous budgets, and it's a shame at the one time when we are getting unanimous budgets on the board, the council is kind of in disarray on the partisan basis, and we have not been able to achieve some of the goals that we set out to. Not because we didn't have the support of Paul and Jeff and Jerry, because we have had, but nevertheless, despite the work we've done, we've seen our budgets cut. So I'm very concerned about communications. I'm very concerned about the lack of communication between the council and the board. It's especially distressing when the same party controls both boards, that we can't seem to get the council to listen to us at all. The Shared Services Committee, I don't think, has met more than once in the last 3 years. And so I'm hoping to improve that. I have a strong interest in redevelopment, as well as everybody up here. If we want to have a say in the kinds of businesses that we have in town, then we have to have a stake in the game. I'm also concerned that there's no more money really in our open space fund. You know, I thought that the council did a great job in purchasing the Wilkes Farm, but I would support putting another referendum out there so that we can replenish that fund. We still have some additional open space, and we never know when it may become available, and it would be nice to have a say in that. And my other concern is incorporating the town's heritage and history along with what we do, and making sure that we're reaching stakeholders. I serve as a member of the governing board of the Historical Society. We haven't seen a council liaison in in 2 years. So they have no idea what we're doing, and we can't seem to have our voice heard at that level either.
All right, thanks, Martin. Steve, we're just going around, just having people introduce themselves, tell a little bit about themselves. And although I told everyone it should be brief, no one seemed to really understand that.
We thought we were brief.
That wasn't brief?
That was great for us.
No, it was really good. I'll just throw out all of my questions now because you covered everything. No, so Steve, you've been in town for a while too, right?
I have. I grew up in town. My wife Lee and I have raised our 3 boys here, but I was born and raised here. I'm an assistant attorney general right now, but I was in private practice for about 20 years in an office down in Guilford. Truly committed to the town, and I'm willing to work incredibly hard to get things done.
And something that I saw is that you've been on the building committee for the high school,
I
right?
have.
I mean, that's sort of major because that's one of the major things going on in our town right now.
I have. I'm really proud of that, the work that committee has done in a bipartisan fashion. One of the things I think that is really impressive about that committee and the work we've done is we've made some tough decisions when there were issues that came up. For example, the PCBs, and tough decisions had to be made. So I think as a-
PCBs?
Polychloral.
Oh, those PCBs. I'm sorry. You said, I thought it was some technical term I didn't know. Okay.
So there were environmental issues
Oh,
with the
thank you.
project,
There you go.
and it really needed a tough decision. And I think
Okay.
in a bipartisan fashion, that as a committee we were able to do that. I'm certainly willing to reach across the aisle in this setting as well, and it's an important part of the process. And I don't think that's been as smooth or run that way for the past 4 years.
And the building committee is still meeting. Will they be meeting throughout the entire renovation of the high school?
2 times a month
Wow,
right
okay.
now. So
Okay.
similar to the council, and it's been that way probably for the last, certainly the last 6 months.
Okay.
Before that, it was a once-a-month meeting.
Well, that's good.
for-
Good
for
to
a number
know.
of years.
I know he's dedicated, just came from there.
You just came from the meeting? All right, then I'll take off the X mark because you were late.
If I could just say a word about Steve, because he's obviously somewhat humble, but he is our newest member of our slate and has not served previously. Great lineage. His dad is a former mayor, obviously, in town.
The first elected mayor, right?
The first Democrat,
First Democrat.
Wow.
not the first elected.
Okay, first
But certainly
elected
the first Democrat.
Democrat.
And also, as a young dad with children in the school system and active with soccer, he sort of represents something that's important to us. And many of us have been around a little bit, and our kids have gone through the system and gone beyond. But Steve represents, in my mind, this young and energetic blood that's really important for us because we're going to be able to get, I think, a greater cross-section of awareness of our constituencies in town. And we're really excited to have him. He's done an incredible job campaigning, jumped right into it, and has been door knocking to knock the socks off of everybody, which is wonderful. And we're really excited to have him. And one mention about Tony, who, although Tony has not served on the council, he ran 2 years ago and I think lost by
10.
11 votes. So,
Oh, man.
which will lead us into some discussion at some point about the importance of our voters getting out. When people say votes count, those count enormously. And Tony came so close, and he's such a talented candidate for office and the kinds of experience he has. So we really I wanted to make mention of those 2 things as 2 new folks that are in our slate, and they round out, I think, very importantly, what we're offering to our community.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Just a reminder, 721-8814. If you have questions, please feel free to call in. And okay, let's ask a few questions then. A lot of you folks mentioned shared services, and I think I need to know a little bit more about what you're talking about. Okay, so you're interested in shared services, but what is that, and why is it important here?
Shared Services is a joint committee with, I believe, 4 members from the Board of Ed and 4 members from the Town Council. When the Democrats had the majority and specifically when I was on the board and the chair, we met once a month. And there was it was a standing meeting. 4 people showed up from the Board of Ed, 4 people from the council. It has a substantive agenda. We had public comment. People came from anywhere in town that had an issue, whether it was with parking at a school or curriculum or anything that needed attention. And we listened to them, and we had they had input, and we came up with plans and took corrective action. One of the joint goals of shared services, and it's not just to meet and have a nice meeting every month, but to actually try and come up with ideas where you could save the town money. There's an awful lot of duplication between stuff is done on the board side and stuff is done on the council, and we need to think outside the box and come up with ways to combine services where appropriate. So maybe one person could do a job and do part-time, half-time for the Board of Ed or half-time for the council. In fact, we did accomplish combining services several years ago when the Democrats were in charge, and we combined IT functions with the board and the town council, and we also combined physical services. And all the board staff went down to the town garage on in Old Weathersfield, and that was the overall department for both town and board's custodial staff and physical services staff. It was effective, fairly effective. Unfortunately, the person in charge on the board side retired, left, and it's never really lived up to its potential. There were some contractual issues involved in these kinds of mergers, and obviously those are areas that can be worked through if both sides are willing to negotiate and take all the issues into account. Finances is another area which could be combined. There's just a lot of areas out there where there's board turf and there's council turf, and it should all be town interests and town turf, and where we could get a better bang for our buck and maybe lower cost to citizens.
Speaking of turf, a couple of you've mentioned, I think it was you, Martin, who mentioned that there was a problem with the Board of Ed budget as far as the town council was concerned. Are they just not working together?
Well, I think what Jerry's talking about is just a symptom of the problem, because one thing that we always found when we had regular shared services meeting was it was a great opportunity for board and council members to share information and to get an idea of where each other was. As it is now, I mean, the chairman of our board is a Republican, Mr. Cassio, and when we were going through the budget, he represented to me that he had made several attempts to get a hold of the council because he wanted to talk with them about where we were in our budget process, and we couldn't. There was no communication. We had one counselor who showed up for one of our budget workshops, one out of 17 hours, 1 hour that we put together, and when we met before the council, we were just faced with the prospect of a cut with no explanation. So we were very disappointed in that, especially with the work that we put together. It's not every day that you get a bipartisan board to put together a unanimous budget, and we've done it 2 years in a row. And yet it doesn't seem to make any difference.
So what would people do differently
Well,
to fix some of that?
Let me paint a little bit of a brief scenario of what we did a few years ago that contrasts what I think has occurred. Back when we were majority, Andy Addo was mayor and I was deputy mayor. Julie was vice chair and Stacy Hodges was chair. And there was, Bonnie was at the time the town manager. Well, we met, I think, 8 or 9 times between the period of February to the passage of the budget with just the leadership initially. And of course, they had subcommittees of finance. There was a finance subcommittee for the town side and there was a finance subcommittee for the board side. But we began to shape where we needed to get with the budget. And that was at the very beginning of the recession. And we knew in the leadership that the town was going to experience the hit of the recession, and it was critical that we found a way to, if at all possible, come in with a zero-based budget with that year. And we did that. And we did that with a lot of collaboration. We got concessions from the teachers with respect to days, and we fabricated together a budget that was collaborative and successful. And why that's so important, I mean, one of the misrepresentations I think sometimes people hear about Democrats is that we're a tax and spend group. Well, the truth of the matter is we understood the importance of the budget as well as anybody, and if you look at the record over the last 5 years, we were the only ones to come in with a zero, and we understand that. We understand that there's a climate in town right now, again, still with the recession, that we need to do that. So it isn't about, we understood, and I think Jeff would agree because Jeff was on the Finance Committee the last several years, that we understood we had to find cuts. We had to find a way to keep our tax rates low. Our residents need that. We subscribe to that thinking. But it's doing what Martin was saying. It's sitting down and collaborating and finding those cuts together. This year, there were no cuts made on the town side, and all the cuts were born on the board side. But they were done without that collaboration. And to me, again, this is what is so key to good government, is that our groups can sit down together, get at the table, and begin to go line by line and look at some of the priorities. The board spent, as Martin just said, 17 hours crafting a unanimous budget, and they know going in that their first blush is probably going to be the starting point, and there's going to be some dialogue. But it's the lack of dialogue is the thing that concerns us, and this is something that we as a group are huge proponents of. And so that distinction is real clear. It's something that I think our residents should be very attentive to, because you can get where we need to be with respect to intelligent budget and the kinds of work that Jeff was doing on finance, but it's got to be done collaboratively, and that's a very, very big priority for us.
Yeah, Heidi, I mean, if you take a look over the past few years, I've been sort of tough on a number of budgets. And in times on the school budget, there were a number of times that energy costs were overestimated. There were times when certain benefit costs were overestimated. And I've made a number of motions over the years to reduce the board budget when there was something to reduce. Mm-hmm. But this time, actually, the board presented a very good argument as to why there wasn't a lot to reduce. And we met with them, and the Republican chair of the board pleaded with the council in open session not to reduce it. The finance chair of the board, a Republican, pleaded. But there was no communication even among the Republicans, and because there really wasn't anything in there unless you wanted to cut programs to eliminate. So what happened? We get to the budget day, and there are 4 motions that Republicans make to reduce the board budget, and every one of them failed because they couldn't even agree among themselves what should be done. They called essentially a timeout, a recess, and eventually cut $325,000 off the board budget. So what do we not have? Well, in this day and age, we don't have a director of security in the school department. We need a director of security and residency for 2 reasons. A, we have to strategize from a very high level how to keep our schools safe. And then also, we need to ensure that the people who go to Wethersfield schools belong in Wethersfield schools. That if you don't live in Wethersfield, you shouldn't be attending Wethersfield schools unless there's some sort of cooperative relationship. And there's probably a lot of money that we spend. We have a part-time residency officer. There's a lot of money that we spend to try to ensure that happens, but we don't have the resources. So this probably could have ended up saving the town money, but instead it just got cut out, and for no apparent reason. There was absolutely no justification the day that board budget was cut as to where it was supposed to come from. And Republicans and Democrats on the board both said, you're imagining things to the council, but they didn't want to talk to anybody. They just went through, cut the board budget. So there's a lot of stuff that we should be doing, which we're not doing, in order to secure and improve the schools. And it was just basically a lack of communication. There are other areas that we could really go after, to Jerry's point, combining IT, combining facilities, combining finance. These are not the teachers. These are the people in the back. This is sort of, I want to say, it's sort of like the overheads, the administration, that you probably can pare back. But we don't go after that at all because the Republicans on the council didn't talk to anybody. And you can't communicate if you don't talk to anybody.
Well, just to follow up on something Paul said too, the real issue is there's no leadership on the Republican side. And for the entire town council to get to the final meeting of the budget session where we're voting on the budget, and the Republican majority didn't even have a number that made sense or that would pass among themselves, where's the leadership? And we had 4 tries, and people were throwing out numbers. 350. Well, how about 355? How about we cut 400,000? No, 425. Oh, timeout. Let's make it 325,000. There was no rationale. It was just pick a number. The price is right, and really very willy-nilly.
And we reached out. We reached out in the months coming up to the budget passage and had conversations that were not responded to. And I have to say, you know, Jeff, Jerry, and I, as the three minority members that are sitting on the council, I think we have something like 25 years between us in terms of experience. And we're not trying to lead the show. We respect the fact that the community made a choice with respect to the majority. But we also think that it would be prudent on the part of the majority to delve into some of the experience and knowledge and offerings that we would have to get us where we need to be, again, more collaboratively. We were caucusing regularly with the Democrats on the board side and had a very clear vision of how we might get there through some discussion, expecting fully that we would have, you know, large and significant council meetings with the full council. And this was sort of a point of contention during the budget process, that it all happened in subcommittee, and up until the very end, we weren't aware that that was the only mechanism that we were going to get communication. And Jerry reached out at one point and said, listen, is it possible that we can get the copies of your budget drafts and the matrix that they were working on in a laptop? And because we were going into these subcommittee meetings and things were being unfolded, you know, on a laptop. And we were like, we'd like to at least delve into it a little bit and do some homework and understand it and perhaps talk with our caucus. But we were promised that the documents, never got them, and then we got into final budget passage, and it became apparent that we weren't going to meet as a total council and hammer some of that. Now, again, the choice and the methodology you can take some issue with, but at the end of the day, communicate up front the rules of the road. It's like playing a baseball game, and then at the end saying, "Oh, by the way, this is the new rules. We didn't mention that to you." And for us, it's like, look, we want to participate, we want to collaborate. And we really just didn't get that opportunity, which I think is that's just not really strong government. It's not really strong leadership. We can do our community better, and we can find some of those things that Jeff is talking about by intelligent delving into some really higher level negotiation than what occurred in the last few years. And that's what we offer, that experience, that knowledge, and that collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, Heidi, if you go back 3 years, it wasn't only this year, if you go back 3 years, there was a very significant reduction in the Board of Education budget. The board said, we cannot sustain it. We are going to have layoffs if you do it. The council basically said, I don't believe you, just like they didn't believe that they wouldn't be hiring a security director. They cut the budget, and we laid off like 10 or 12 young teachers.
That's what I was going to ask. We lost some teachers,
We
right?
lost teachers. For the first time ever, we laid off teachers. And by the way, in the board budget this year, we have to fund this. We're paying $35,000 to the state of Connecticut to reimburse them for unemployment benefits for those teachers we laid off. So we could hire a teacher with the amount that we're paying the state. It makes no sense. And it's all a matter of communication. But also, there's an arrogance. There clearly is an arrogance. We know what you can do. You're not telling us the truth. We know better. We may not have been in those 17 hours where you guys put together the budget, but we know better. And it's that arrogance that really permeates all these deliberations. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, that's quite, I agree. You know, we invited the council to come to our workshops, and you know, in the end, I mean, when you're looking over the entire budget, you're going to have lines where you have surpluses, you're going to have lines where you have deficits, and you have to make some transfers at the end. Doesn't matter if you're on the board or the council, you're going to have to do that. And there was a lot of noise made about a surplus that we had of approximately $200,000 in the salary line. Well, that was true. We had a lot of unexpected FMLA leaves, things like that, that you don't anticipate because you don't know when those are going to come up. But we also had $150,000 in unplanned security costs after Newtown. I mean, it wasn't like we were sitting around saying, well, we just can't afford this. You know, Fred Bushy pulled together, we had a lot of classrooms that didn't have door locks. We had a lot of areas in Hanmer that just had partitions and not solid walls. We had a lot of exterior doors that were problematic. I mean, our staff got together and we did what we could. We pulled those funds out of the budget. It's not like we just ignored safety for our kids. You know, we did what we could. But at the end of the day, when the council made the budget cut for the security director, we had told them, like everybody up here has said, we're the Board of Education, not the Board of Security. And so we lost that. We also lost the opportunity for a curriculum director for math, an instructional supervisor, which we also had hoped to get.
What I think is clear is any decision, it's common sense, whether it's in business, whether it's in government, whether it's on the sporting arena. When you have open communication, when you hear different points of view, the end result is always a better result. And I think this board, this council certainly would be willing to listen to other sides, other viewpoints, and make a rational, reasonable decision, and the best decision, because you you don't make a good decision when you only want to hear one side. You need to hear differing viewpoints.
And that obviously worked with you and the building committee.
It did.
I mean,
It
that's,
has,
yeah,
And again, like I said, there were times, you know, that people would disagree over things, but
Fine.
In the end, a decision is best when you're hearing differing viewpoints, and it's essential. And again, it's common sense.
and there's nothing wrong with disagreement. I mean, that's healthy. I'm sure you welcome that.
Yeah, that's how the best decision is made
Yeah.
where there's healthy debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll make one point about that, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but again, going to 2010, we came in at 0, and Andy and I were majority leaders at the time under the Democrats, and Julie and Stacy were on the board. You can imagine that Julie and I had several disagreements over the intent
Yeah, I
to
would
cut.
think
And,
so.
there were some
I would
long
think
discussions
so.
away from the scene, but at the end of the day, we got to 0, and we came out of those discussions and accomplished the goal that was in the best interest of our community, because we knew we needed to do that. And Democrats will do that and continue to do that if we have a chance. If you look at today, where we are as a community and the level of communication that we are having and the level of communication we could be having between the board and the council, I think most residents who are paying attention, parents who are watching what's happening, would have to agree that we can be doing a lot better. And it isn't about bashing the Republicans. I think the Republicans have done some decent things over the last few years. It's about recognizing that we could be at a better level. We can be communicating more effectively, we can get to these cuts, and we can keep our budget under control and give our taxpayers relief. Because let's face it, Connecticut is lagging behind the rest of the nation when it comes to the recession. We are not where we need to be. We recognize that. You know, if you look at the ad that's in the paper that the Republicans are putting out, it's a little bit of a scare thing to talk about Democrats are raising it 40%, we did this. That's not really the fact of the matter, especially when you look at the graph they're showing that they're taking the 0% one that we did and put it in their number. I mean, that's a little,
that's
more than
interesting.
misleading. But, you know, I want to say to our community that this Democratic team recognizes what's happening. We are living in the community ourselves. We are all paying taxes like everybody else. If we go too high on taxes, we ourselves are going to be going into our pockets. We're living the same experience as our residents, and we appreciate that. And it's through that really hard work that we can get where we need to be on behalf of our community. It's not a tax and spend Democrat versus Republicans that are coming in. Give them credit where it's due in terms of what they've done, but it's more about the process. The process has to be done intelligently, and the board, I think, is ready to come to the table and make some of those intelligent choices, but you got to reach out, and you got to say, let's play nice at the table together. That's what we're talking about, and we think residents should know that we offer something that's a little bit special in that regard.
Well, another thing to follow up on this ad, because the Republicans have been in power, have the majority for 4 years, yet they're claiming that they've cut taxes for 5 years, and in fact, it's 2010 where we had a 0 tax increase they're claiming as one of their years. This was brought to their attention over the past month, and yet the same incorrect ad is run one more time in Weathersfield Life. So they've done nothing to correct their error because they want to mislead the citizenry that, you know, they had a year with 0 taxes when it was clearly the Democrats were the majority. So we get blamed for being having raised taxes X number of percent, but it doesn't, you know, they're factoring in our number to make them look better. And again,
Oh, my.
yeah, and we brought it up at the last council meeting, it was brought up to individual people before that, and yet the same incorrect ad has been run. And in fact, at the last council meeting, one of the Republican councilors said, oh, we didn't know that, it must have been it's the paper's fault that they made an error in the ad. So, I mean, just the level of hubris is unbelievable.
That's
And
interesting.
Heidi, I would add, if you look through it, you know, if you look at what we want to do, it's really looking to the future. If you look at what they want to do, it's really looking to the past. I mean, you can't see what they want to do over the next 2 or 4 years. I mean, there are things we want to do. If you look up and down the Silas-Deane Highway, there is a lot of untapped potential along there. There are vacant buildings which Republicans have basically said, it's not our job. It's not our job as council people to push it. So the redevelopment agency doesn't meet. They don't attend the EDIC meetings. They basically have said, look, you know, we're 85% residential, we'll always be 85% residential. We can't move the needle at all. So therefore, we continue to see a vacant fund zone. We continue to see a vacant Weight Watchers. We have no activity going on. We see a pawn shop, we see dollar stores. We don't see what we want to see in the main commercial thoroughfare. And if you walk up and down, to talk to residents, you can say there could be a better future. It's not going to be a better future if the people who get elected who don't believe in economic development. If you elect us, we will push the envelope, and we will make it a more Weathersfield more of a mecca. And by the way, A, it increases jobs. B, it increases the sense of community. C, it makes the town look better. And then D, it actually, if you bring in more commercial buildings, it creates more tax revenue, which lowers residential property taxes. But if you ask Republicans, that's not our job. And they say that time and again. Well, it is our job. I mean, the 6 of us, it is our job. And we will push that if you elect us.
Well,
I was just going to ask, Tony, you've been on the Economic Development Improvement Commission, right?
Yeah, I've been on it for a little over a year now, and one of the things I've been doing is going out and visiting businesses that are here and try to make them aware, for those that don't know, that we do have a facade loan program where they can, fix up the front of their buildings. They do all the work. Once it's done, we will match half of it and give them an interest-free loan for them for the work they've done that they don't have to pay back if they stay for 10 years. And as a result of that program alone, the town makes a lot of money. Number one, building permits come in for that work. 2, taxes on the property go up. So we got a win-win on both situations. More people start visiting those establishments, which means they hire more people, which means more people spend in the community, so we make out all the way around. I mean, we've done businesses like, it's still vacant because they've just started working on it, what was the Porter and Chester building. They took advantage of the facade loan program. We had Subways, which is just about done with theirs. Milo Fabric in the building next to them.
Looks good.
I mean, these are all buildings that have been drastically improved, where if we can continue that, we can definitely use that as a tool to draw more businesses into town. High-quality businesses want to be here because they see the facade looking the way they want it to see, not run down, but new and fresh, and bring us a lot more in taxes. And that's what we have to do, get those businesses in so we can increase that commercial property tax, which will be a definite savings to our residents on their own individual home taxes.
I want to share one thing, and then I want to give Steve a second. But
You do?
yeah, I mean, we gotta get our young blood in there.
Yeah, here we go.
It's tough, it's like.
Paul again. Okay, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm gonna let you go.
No, it's all right.
I just wanted to mention, my mic dropped here, so.
Oh, good. Steve?
Steve, take advantage. Go ahead.
He's got to fix
All
that.
I was going to say was, economic development is not easy, but it requires a thoughtful analysis, but it also requires hard work, and you really just have to do the legwork and be committed to making that a priority, and that really has not been done. And I think certainly this group is committed to that. I'm absolutely committed to doing the legwork that's needed to really keep this town or make this town the community that we all expect it to be. So I think it's hard work and commitment, and that's what this group will bring.
Paul?
Yeah, and I want to say, I had the good fortune 12 years ago to be involved in an economic development initiative in Suffield, where my business ended up being relocated. And we worked with an economic development coordinator from Suffield who was leading the initiative, and there was what was called a Mach 1 industrial park. And there were 7 potential developable sites in this Mach 1 industrial park, of which we were fortunate enough to be one of the businesses that located there. But the success story there was about the elected officials in Suffield, the economic development coordinator, the economic development planner, plus several businesses that were already in place soliciting and drawing in the businesses to take a look at Mach 1 as an option. And it was a huge collaboration that got the businesses. Now that Mach 1 industrial park is now full 12 years later. There are 12 full businesses, 8 major ones that are in this industrial park, which are right by the airport. And going through that process really cemented for me the awareness of how that gets done. It isn't something like Jeff just said, he hit the nail on the head. It doesn't just come to us. Weathersfield is competing with Glastonbury and West Hartford and Newington. We hear, well, how's Newington getting all these businesses? And how is Glastonbury getting all these businesses? And Weathersfield continues to have stagnant buildings. Well, it's because we're really not diving into it. To get those businesses that are looking at potential locations at the table requires some real homework. And all the demographics about Weathersfield are in our favor. The traffic flow going by Silas Dean, which is what businesses base their decision on. We need to market that, we need to push for that, we need to get those businesses at the table, and our elected officials have to play a pivotal role. Suffield did it very successfully. We should be doing that. We were very close on the Silas Dean redevelopment project, the Weight Watchers, and it failed because we double loaded it with this Berlin Turnpike project, which brought them both down.
And I actually want to ask about that. It was the failed referendum because there was a Silas Dean proposal, and then my recollection is at the last minute there was a Berlin Turnpike proposal that wasn't truly vetted thoroughly. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, Heidi, there were two proposals. One had really percolated up through the redevelopment agency, and there was a financial commitment from the owner of the property at the Weight Watchers building, and it would have been an excellent proposal, and it was endorsed unanimously by the council and by the redevelopment agency. And then you're right, later on there was this other sort of harebrained idea of putting like 150 apartments at the intersection of the Berlin Turnpike and Knott Street, where the traffic's already bad, and it would have exacerbated it. And residents saw right through it, and they knocked down that awful proposal by about a 3-to-1 margin. It was probably about the most lopsided vote we've ever had in town. Unfortunately, I think people sort of said, oh, well, redevelopment's bad because they had this horrible proposal the Republicans had put forth. We had opposed, and we had warned them about it, but they knew better, so they pushed it forward, and it got devastated in the election in 2011. But this other idea where there really was skin in the game by the owner, as opposed to a lot of risk by the town on the Berlin Turnpike proposal. The other one went down by, I don't know, 100, 200 votes. It was really too bad. It really could have jump-started some development on the Silas Dean Highway, and it went down. And the Republicans said, well, town doesn't want redevelopment. They voted down both proposals. Well, they wouldn't have voted down the good proposal if you hadn't thrown this turkey out in front of them. And if we're back, there's a pledge here. If we're back, we're going to revitalize that redevelopment agency, and we're going to bring forth to voters a proposal that people, I think, can embrace, not one that puts the town millions of dollars at risk, which is what the Republicans had done on the Berlin Turnpike. We've got to do that. I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but we want to sort of bridge also into some open space issues as we go, because there are two sides.
I have no idea
But what does it do too? When you have a redevelopment agency, you have people who have been appointed to that agency, who have worked for years to bring a project forward, and you have the whole thing scooped away from you by a majority on the town council to put something on that's not vetted. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. You have the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee that works to put together projects that that need to be done in town. And then the town council swoops in and pulls a parking lot project.
For $210,000 out of thin air.
Would have paid for a security director.
I know several of you are very much interested in open space and making sure that continues. Martin, I know you are. I think everyone is, as everyone is interested in economic development. But I know open space is a big issue here.
Well, it's interesting that when we were, back when I was on the council, when we first got the open space fund, when the referendum passed, and when we moved to purchase the Wilkes property, we didn't have any Republican support for that. And now it seems like, I guess it's the most wonderful thing in the world. But they've not made a move to replenish the open space fund. I don't know exactly how much is left in it. We started with $5 million. There can't be much after the purchase of the Wilkes property and the other 5 acres that we bought from the Boy Scouts, the YMCA. So, I mean, if there's anything in that fund, it can't be more than a couple $100,000. So if anything comes available on the market, we have no voice.
And Wilkes was a Democratic initiative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which you'd never know by reading the ad.
Right.
And Heidi, you have to, the history on that is pretty interesting because, as Martin said, residents voted overwhelmingly to authorize spending up to $5 million for open space. So that was good, and and it went through, I don't know if it was 5 or 3, but.
5.
5, okay, and that went through, and we bought the Wilkes property, and we bought the other property, that was great. The Republicans, all 3 Republicans on the council at that time opposed it. There was a referendum. In the referendum, folks endorsed, townspeople, really a great turnout, frankly, a better turnout than we get in local elections, endorsed it by better than 3-2 margin, so that was great. Then the council turned over, and the Republicans really dragged their feet on closing, because we had approved, but we hadn't yet closed. Republicans really dragged their feet on closing, and we were a little concerned that we wouldn't close the deal, but ultimately we did, even though 2 of the Republicans opposed the closing, essentially the final terms. And then what happens, about a few months later, that all of a sudden, we have to figure out what we're going to do with the house and barns on the property. And Republicans say, oh, I think there would be a great idea. We'll trade it and give it to a developer so he could tear down the house, tear down these historic barns, and build 6 very, very large houses, McMansions, on the property. And it passed 5-4 with 5 Republicans in support of it, the 3 of us and 1 of the Republicans voting against it. And people in town went nuts. And we had well over 100 people at a council meeting back in January saying, what did you do? What is it about a 3-2 margin in favor of this proposal that you don't understand? And we had proposed a good idea. An exchange would have created new open space on Goff. It would have preserved the open space on Willow. And you hear about you can't fight City Hall. Well, residents successfully fought a very dumb decision on the part of the town council. And with their tail between their legs, the Republicans ultimately rescinded their vote in December. And just drive down Willow Street, look at the beautiful open space. And that wouldn't have happened if Jerry, Paul, and I hadn't been screaming about what a terrible decision they were making. And perhaps more importantly, hundreds of residents endorsed that and said that Republicans, Democrats, Independents, conservationists, everybody got up. It was a coalition of people, regardless of political affiliation, who got up and said, that was a terrible decision you made, reverse it. And with their tail between their legs, ultimately they did. And yet, if you read their ad, they preserved Wilkes. No, they didn't. They almost threw it away.
I just want to touch base on a few other things. One is the Northeast Utilities property in Weathersfield. There was some discussion about whether that's what happened to it was good or whether it wasn't good.
I think it's one of the worst financial decisions made in the history of the town.
Oh, that would be not good.
Yeah.
Check.
I agree with Jerry.
This was a large property that in its prime was the largest taxpayer in Weathersfield. I think about $500,000 a year in taxes were brought into the grand list. The property went vacant. There were a variety of ideas kicked around over the past few years. The economy went south. Some people that had ideas pulled out. But at least Northeast Utilities was paying taxes on the vacant building and what was left in there. The Republicans decided to turn this over to CREC, Capital Region Education Council, for a magnet school. So what that in effect has done is taken that huge taxable property off the tax rolls forever. In lieu of future tax payments, they gave us a one-time $2 million payment, contribution to the town, whatever. So, but what makes it such a bad decision is, in addition to taking the property off the tax rolls forever, any Weathersfield students that go to school there, the town will now have to pay their tuition at the magnet school. So we've already budgeted for kids in our school system, and for the kids that go to the magnet school, we'll in essence be paying twice. We'll be paying for the Weathersfield school system and their tuition at the magnet school. Jeff used the term before about some dumb decisions, but there just seems to be a real series of dumb decisions. The saving grace, according to the Republicans, is we'll get to use the school after school, the building after school, and soccer fields. Well, you know what? Soccer fields could be built anywhere, and losing $500,000 or more of taxable income every year in perpetuity, it doesn't even balance out.
Well, if you took one look at the master plan, you'd see where the soccer field should be built over
Right.
at Mill Woods.
Right.
I mean, we've already
I certainly
planned
support
for that.
soccer fields.
Yeah, me too.
My kids have played.
You're a coach. And
And then I've coached and,
Yeah.
and done all that, but I do think you can't throw away the future for a short-term game.
And that was interesting because, yeah, Craig came before the board and said, boy, you know, we really like this site, but we have other sites. And if we're not fully supported by the board and the council, then we're not interested. Well, as soon as they started to get questions from the board, that was the last we saw of them. The board never
Interesting.
approved the school, and it was right over to the council. And I don't think any Democrat voted to approve that.
No.
No, we were opposed to it. I mean, and both my daughters went to the magnet school in Hartford, so I'm a big fan of Craig and the magnet school. The problem was we placed it on a site that was just unsuitable and damaged our tax base. And what you do, all these things that we're talking about, trying to redevelop and bring business into town, and that single decision did more damage than we could probably unravel for a dozen years. So it's just bad placement, and Craig does a wonderful job, but we should have been looking at non-revenue producing property if we wanted to consider it on the town site somewhere. So that was a very, very difficult decision for us to watch happen.
we have a question, a call-in, and I think this might be a good way for everyone to have a chance to talk a bit, talk about infrastructure, your priorities, what you'll do next when you're elected for your term. The question, and also please address this, what do you plan to do to bring in new business? So if maybe everyone could just give a summary or what you'd like to address. Okay, who's first?
Let's start with Tony.
I mean, having sat on economic development, what I'd like to do is, if elected, be a liaison to that committee because I could show
know
up
it.
every single meeting being retired. Unlike the current who has a job to go and doesn't make very many of them. And what I'd like to do is work with the town planner and commercial broker to take a look at all our empty buildings and find suitable tenants to fill those slots. You know, people that would grow commerce in town and bring other businesses behind them. You know, make the Silestine and the Berlin Turnpike what they should be. We have a gem already in Old Weathersfield with, you know, the tourism down there. But we have to do something with the other two parcels to increase our tax base. And I think that's a good way by, you know, a council person working with town staff and developers and commercial brokers to get those slots filled.
Good, thank you. Should we go to Steve next?
One of my main priorities, obviously, is making sure the high school building project runs smoothly and within budget. It's an incredibly complex project. It will require oversight from the council as well. And again, a liaison, an active liaison on that committee would certainly be a helpful and a positive development. On the economic development side, again, I think it's, as Tony says, a lot of it is really reaching out to the businesses that we have, but also reaching out to potential new businesses. There are opportunities to at the state level also to explore whether there's an ability to get some assistance or information and advice from state agencies that could help with economic development. There are a lot of resources that I don't think we're tapping that we could. And again, it's doing the legwork and really being committed to it. If you're not committed to it, you're not going to get it done. And I think this group is obviously committed.
Heidi, I think you need a signature project. You know, honestly, you have to go after one of the big vacancies on the Silestine Highway, and I think that's what we would do. You know, whether it's Weight Watchers or Fun Zone or maybe another property, but you've got to go after that. And I think if the town shows a commitment to get the property redeveloped, and that is a singular focus of the town officials, and the town officials are held accountable to get that done, then that's going to be a tremendous signal. I mean, with all due respect to Buffalo Wild Wings, the Republicans tout their move into town as the great coming of economic development. That's not economic development. Economic development is when you take a significantly underutilized eyesore on the Silestine Highway and make it into sort of a glowing emblem of what this town is, and they don't even get it. I mean, they don't. How could you say that represents, you know, the best of Weathersfield economic development? We will get that project going.
Good.
Let me paint a picture, if you will, following Jeff's point, of a redevelopment project that has mixed use. It has retail, it has some residential mixed in, it has some commercial business that's based, and it's taking a site that is currently vastly underutilized and brings it to vital revitalization in life. That's critical.
But I do think, I agree with Steve too. I mean, and I agree with everyone here. Mixed use development, signature product to show what the Silas Dean can be, but including our existing businesses. There are people who are keeping the economy going along the Silas Dean too. You know, we got to include the people who are already making their home here.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'm hearing as well in walking around town. There really needs to be much more dialogue with the folks that we have, making sure we're doing all we can do.
And if you take the plan that was in place for the Weight Watchers building where the referendum failed, the apartments in there were going to be one-bedroom type apartments. So it wasn't going to affect the school districts. It was going to bring in empty nesters and young professionals that are getting started. So it wouldn't be a tax on our schools. Plus, having gone walking around, there's a lot of seniors in this town that are looking that at some point they're going to have to move out of their houses, but they don't want to move out of Weathersfield.
Right.
Yeah.
They
And
wanna
there's
stay
nothing
here.
for them.
And there's no real senior housing available for them. So if we can get Weight Watchers going for what was considered in the referendum, that's going to be a big plus for us to keep existing people in town when they have to move out of their houses.
Jerry, real quick, we only have another minute or two, and we want to encourage voters to get out there on the 5th, but say something.
Please vote for us. We're a great team. We work well together, the newer folks and the old-timers, Paul and Jeff and
And the
myself.
old folks, yeah.
And again, we can't stress enough how important it is to get out to vote. If you're going to vote, please try and convince a friend who doesn't normally vote to come along and vote also. You know, there's no excuse for the weather. You know, in other countries you see around the world, third world countries, people risk their lives for the right to vote. And you see on TV when they voted, they hold up their finger with the little ink stain on it, and they're so proud. And we've had, you know, history in this country of veterans, many veterans, many wars have fought and died for this freedom, and sometimes we just take it for granted. So I would urge everyone to please come out and vote on November 5th and consider our team, and we think we will, we're the best team for Weathersfield and for the town, and we will take your interest to heart and improve life in Weathersfield.
And someone called in and just encouraged everyone to read Weathersfield Life to learn about these 6.
Yeah, I enjoyed reading those, and to be fair, the candidates that are in play, Democrat, Republican, petitioning candidate, independent, it's fascinating reading. It does give you a real feel for the thinking of the candidates, and that's something that our voters need to do. But just emphasizing Jerry's point again, you know, we've had very light voter turnout at the last 2 elections, and you know, I think it's so critical that we get our residents to come out and weigh in. It will speak to what we're talking about. If people look at what we're talking about this evening and are paying attention and recognize that what we're talking about is bringing Weathersfield up to the next level with the sort of experience and leadership and collaboration that this table offers, just come out and vote. If you agree with us, vote for us. If you don't agree with us, obviously you can choose a different path, but it should be a robust number. Years ago, Weathersfield was winning awards in the Secretary of State's office for incredible voter turnout, something like 47% of our total voter base. I think we came in at maybe 16% last time.
That's not
heartbreaking.
good.
I'd rather lose by 2,000 votes than and know these people came out than to lose like Tony did by 11 votes because we had such a bad turnout. We want to work for the community, remembering that we're all volunteers. We live in the town. We care a great deal about the message that we're conveying tonight, and we need our voters to get out there and take the time to pull the levers and confirm that you see what we're talking about. Hopefully, give us an opportunity. We really are a very hard-working group, and our 2 new members that are on the slate, they're just tireless. It's amazing to watch, and I'm thinking we're pretty good, but Steve and Tony have just been fabulous. I mean, I think, Tony, you've hit hundreds of houses, haven't you? I mean, and Steve has just lapped us. So, I mean, these guys are fabulous. Give them the chance to serve our community and do the things we're talking about, and I think our residents will see that we will bring you back to where this community should be.
And just one final closing thought. This year, the law changed, and you can actually register to vote on Election Day in certain circumstances. So if you're watching this and you're sitting home saying, oh, I wish I had registered, show up on November 5th at your local polling place, explain your situation, and in many instances, you'll be allowed to register on the spot and vote. Just bring your photo ID so they know who you are.
And if something comes up where you can't be here, all you have to do is go down to the town clerk's office. You can fill out an application for an absentee ballot, and they'll hand you the ballot right then. You can go in the back room, fill it out, and get it done. So please get out and vote.
All right. Well, thank you. Do we have one more question?
We do have one more question. Charles Forster called in, and he's asking regarding the position of the school security director. He asked, why was that not filled, and what is it going to take to get that filled?
Did everyone hear that? The
Martin
position of
Martin can answer.
Yeah.
Director of Security?
Well, yeah,
Thank you.
again, this was an example to us of, we received our marching orders from the town as far as what the cut was gonna be. If we had hired the security director with board funds, then that would have meant cutting programs, and we weren't willing to do that. We decided unanimously, a consensus, that, we had to be the Board of Education first. As I said before, we took $150,000 of unbudgeted funds and moved them to harden security in the buildings that we had, but we didn't feel we could responsibly hire the security director because it would have meant a program cut. So thankfully, Paul and Jeff and Jerry brought the matter back up to the council and tried to get it to fund us. I don't know ultimately what's going to happen there. They took no action so far. Maybe after the election, the shared services will meet and we'll be able to make some decisions and hopefully get that done.
And sort of sadly, there was this sniping that was going back between the board and the council that got kind of public over the second initiative, and instead of focusing on how we solve it, and this is what we were talking about on the council, it became, well, you could have funded it, no, we didn't have the funding, and there was this back and forth. That's not in our community's best interest. If we were elected in the majority, we would get that solved. I'm sure that this group would agree it's a top priority. We had 2 shootings across the nation last week in schools. I think our parents in town recognize the importance of this priority. It doesn't matter, as I said several weeks ago in this discussion, it doesn't matter why it didn't get funded anymore. It matters that we sit together and solve it and get it funded and get that position in place. And as Jeff said, it'll pay for itself. Just in terms of the resource officer being able to identify users of our system that are not entitled, it will pay for itself. It's an intelligent decision. It would be an intelligent leadership decision. We would get that done if you get us back in office.
And the chief of police has said it's one of his #1 priorities, so how the council leadership can ignore that is beyond me.
Well, I'm impressed with this slate. So everyone, go out and vote on November 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks for hosting.